Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the topic before us today is this has to support genetically engineered life. And seeing as how this topic, we're going to set it in Canada and talk about, the Canadian government's support of genetically engineered life. And in such, we think that the Canadian government should open the doors to genetically engineering life with, very few limitations. We think the only limitations we're going to, prevent on this, human embryos, that sort of thing, human research in genetically engineering life. And furthermore, that if any of these genetic modifications would make a strain or any sort of organism more dangerous than its counterpart that was not genetically modified, then we say that the government must be notified of the potential harms of this, and obviously that this particular organism must be contained in such a manner that it would not affect society. Or else say you have to notify the government of what you're doing, just to let you know that we're maybe making some new strand of Ebola in our backyard, something like that, possibly happening in labs. But we think there are a lot of benefits to opening up the doors to genetic modifications here. And we see that the ones I'm going to look at today, the environmental benefits, the health and food benefits to our society, and the aspect of scientific progress. But first of all, let's look at the environmental benefits. Now, if you have looked at the news recently, or seen a paper, or even talked to anyone on the street, you'll realize that our planet is probably in a bit of danger. And the fact of the matter is that we can't necessarily grow enough food, or lumber, or anything we really need in the space we have provided if we want to provide a standard of life that is a quality for everyone. And we think these environmental aspects provide a problem. Julie, I'll take you in a second. So we see that if you have, things that can grow in more compact spaces, we don't need to necessarily cut down the rainforest if we can, in 1 acre of land, grow what we could in 5. We think that's important. We think, being able to make these modifications that make better use of our resources and make better use of our planet is ultimately a benefit to all, and I'll take Julia's point.
But aren't, say, genetically engineered crops that take over natural spaces part of the problem?
Julia doesn't fear genetically modified crops that take over natural spaces. We think the reason why we protect these natural spaces is, and the reason why the plants that exist there in the first place haven't developed these characteristics, because it obviously provides some sort of, negative pull. Okay? Maybe these crops we're talking about require more water to produce more. And that perhaps, isn't possible if they weren't being irrigated, or, not this time, or, if they require less water, because, during some times they may be flooded. So we think the crops that have evolved naturally have done so for a reason, and the crops that we're going to be caretaking for ourselves can be taking care of us, but possibly wouldn't survive outside their natural environment. We also talk about the food benefits, and we think food is, one of the most alarming issues in our world today. That includes security. We think when you can genetically engineer food, such as rice, to have more vitamin A in it, that can prevent blindness in Africa, we think when you can have your food provide more nutrients to you, you can in fact help cure hunger. And we think that's a very major thing to be looking at today. When you can, make plants that will grow in an arid desert that doesn't necessarily support other plant life. We say those crops are of huge benefit to the people there, and are a huge benefit to the society, not this time. And in fact, can help, bring the society forward in our world. And we say that those crops, though perhaps do not flourish naturally there because, when it actually rains, they might drown. Cactus can survive because they know how to deal with those excess amounts of water. Or wheat that needs to survive in no water will drown when there's tons of water coming in. But we think overall these food security and genetically modified foods provide a huge benefit to some of the poorest places in the world. I also see this aspect of scientific progress that in order to do things, we need to move forward. And we think when we place limitations on this and say we can only take very small steps in one direction, that in effect prevents us from getting some of the most exciting discoveries we've ever had. We think some of the abstract research, that it will happen, will also contribute to, the positive research that we see. We think that, if you just decide to tinker and decide you want a unicorn or something like that, something really random, probably shouldn't happen. But we think tinkering with this genetic modification, even if it isn't necessarily scientifically what we want, it's not the end result we're looking for. It's the progress, the process of how you do this, of how you make these changes, and how you interact with this. We think that in itself is inherently useful, because we think the process of learning how to work with genetic modification can lead to exceptionally positive benefits. We can see that there are many things that people were afraid of, and perhaps rightly so, but that still provide a huge boon on the whole society. Things like X-rays, which did give people cancer when they first came out, but also, saved many people's lives and continue to this day, be able to, protect us from things, let us know if a person's bone is broken, which may sound slightly trivial, but it's actually pretty important for the person whose bone is broken. And I mean, that as a whole, because of the environmental benefits, because of the food benefits, and because of the aspect of scientific progress, this resolution clearly must stand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.